Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. We are looking ahead to just football only this weekend. Nigel Dunne is with myself and Rory. How are you, Nigel?
I'm not too bad, Jacqui. How's things?
Good. All things have settled down in Offaly after the madness, I take it?
Yeah, no, all things have settled down. We're full focus on the senior against Laois at the weekend, and it's a great weekend for football because I think every team bar New York's out with Intelligent Cup and Sam Maguire. So in a football mad county, there's loads of talking points.
Yeah, it is. And actually, Rory, it's kind of nice to just have football in the same way that we'll just have hurling then as well, because it just sort of narrows the focus and allows people to actually go, okay, I can watch a lot of these games, which maybe they haven't been able to do for the last couple of weeks.
And it's such a crucial week, I suppose, just in terms of the destination of where teams are going to end up for the rest of the year. Their positioning at the end of the group stages will largely be defined probably by what happens this weekend, whether or not they're going to be in a position to maybe attack that top spot in the group or potentially end up having to play away from home in the prelim quarters, which, look, does carry an element of jeopardy with it because it's an extra game. You don't get that break week, and then you might be on the road somewhere far away. So like there's a lot to play for, to be fair now. And I know some people have been I know Peter was on last weekend and saying, look, that they were a little bit too quick in terms of dispensing with the current format. I'm not so sure about that. And woe be it for me to be disagreeing with somebody of the caliber and pedigree of Peter Canavan, but I think the main reason why they are very circumspect about this current format is the fact that it could take four championship matches to be beaten out of it. That's whatever about the permutations for teams progressing, which does have an element of excitement to it. We accept that. But it's the fact that, like, you know, like the chances are Cork will struggle again this weekend. That'll be their third championship defeat, right? And they can still qualify for the last 12. I'm not so sure that that's a good situation either.
Yeah. Now, the only thing is, look, we know from next year that's going to change, obviously, with two coming out of the group. So in fairness to the GAA, at least they have recognised, okay, maybe we have an issue here. So we can sort of understand that maybe that one is going to be solved. What I do like is that in this weekend, Nigel, we've got a couple of box office games, which should tell us a little bit more about our major contenders. Because I think maybe Tyrone have thrown themselves into the ring when people thought they were outside. I think Dublin probably put themselves back into the mix with that massive win against Galway. If they go and turn Armagh over in Croke Park this weekend, suddenly maybe people are feeling differently about Dublin than they were 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's funny. And I actually echo what Rory says there. I agree that the lack of jeopardy is probably something that the GAA did need to fix, and in fairness they have. But what's really exciting with all these games is that there's a level playing field. It seems like there's less certainty in results than previously because there's no dominant team. Like and Jacqui, you're referring to Dublin there. They're probably being hampered by, they're always being compared to the brilliant 6 in a row team. So like the standards they have to rise to are always that bit higher. But they've gone nowhere. Like they had a blip against Meath and they showed what they were capable of against Galway. We're seeing, I think, two of the big heavy hitters for the Sam Maguire in action. And I think what Armagh have developed is the ability to always be in the fight. So they're going to be incredibly difficult to beat. And Dublin are now have a pep in their step again, their confidence. Like they've lost the brilliant aura they had of the 6 in a row team, but they haven't lost their brilliance. And there's still pockets of brilliance. And that clutch kick out by Stephen Cluxton and Kieran Kilkenny rolling back the years shows that they're still a force to be reckoned with. But it's just Armagh's overall consistency, and it feels like they're always on a journey or something. They know what the bad times are like. They now know what the good times are like. So I think they want to make hay while the sun shines. And the last time they won Sam Maguire in 2002, they fell short in trying to retain it. But I think Armagh are going to have a major say in retaining the Sam Maguire this year.
It's that consistency, Rory, that's key because, you know, when Nigel talks about that Dublin 6 in a row, they just went on a winning streak and they just kept doing it. If you look at Armagh, since the start of last year, they've played 13 championship games. They've only lost 2. and both of them were to Donegal, one after penalties, one after extra time. So in normal time, they haven't been beaten. And that level of consistency is actually why they can go to Croke Park this weekend and say, do you know what? Dublin might be playing at home, but actually this is going to be great for us because we need to learn a little bit about how we're going to play in there, because we already know we can be consistent. We already know we're winning. So what else can we learn?
And it's probably, to go back to Nigel's point, it's probably still the acid test. To go in and play Dublin in Croke Park, we know, look, Kerry have been the standard bearers in Gaelic football, but Dublin and Croke Park is still the acid test for most teams. Can you? Because the look, I mean, Nigel will tell us, I'm sure, but football plays differently there. It's a home venue for them, and they are very, very comfortable there. So that's the challenge for Armagh. But like as you mentioned, they haven't lost a championship match within 70 minutes in 2 years now. They're just unbelievably consistent, where you can't really say the same for Dublin. Dublin have shown flashes of it this year and last year. They were outstanding the last day against Galway. Can they back it up this weekend? They're going to have their work cut out. It's the champions of last year against the champions from the year before. It's a massive game. It's going to have major repercussions across the group and potentially on the All-Ireland series in the long run. And I think Armagh will be coming fully locked and loaded. This will be a proper game.
And Rian O'Neill to play as well, which would be nice. I think even with having him back in the panel the last day, Nigel, you could see the sense of a lift that it seemed to give Armagh to be able to call on a player of that caliber. If they can suddenly get him firing again at 100%, I think that just adds a whole other dimension to their team that we haven't really seen yet this year.
Yeah, look, I spoke at the top there that I think Armagh will be one of the contenders to win the Sam Maguire, but I'm saying that under the pretense that Rian O'Neill is very much a central player in it, and he may be rusty now because he hasn't played very much intercounty football this year. But what they have to do is actually give him the game time and make sure he plays these next two games, because Armagh's strength and depth is huge. We all know that they have a brilliant squad. But and there may be lads going better than Rian at the moment. So this might be, like, it wouldn't be in Kieran McGeeney's nature to reward someone not doing it on the training field. But I think they need to go with Rian O'Neill, because they need Rian flying it for the latter end. And Rian's best is better than the rest's best when it comes down to it. That's a tongue twister, sorry, I know.
Yeah. No, you're right though. But that's the conundrum I think if you stick or twist now in what is a do or die game, I guess you probably do learn that. You know, like there's no point in him having training matches and not getting back to full tilt. Rory's right. If you want to really find out how can he sort of hit the ground running, then playing against Dublin and Croke Park, there isn't a better test to try to see, can he get to that level?
There's no hiding place. It's like Rory alluded to, it's the pinnacle for any Gaelic footballer. And just because Rian is an outstanding Gaelic footballer, there's still pressure on him to produce it on Sunday. But I do think Armagh need to give him the 70 minutes. I think they need Rian O'Neill for a semi-final or final, maybe later down the line, and he needs to just get minutes in the legs.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
It is amazing that they haven't met in the championship in 15 years now, Jacqui. Like 15 years since Armagh and Dublin have met championship. And obviously Armagh had a very convincing win. Dublin struggled on the road during this year's league campaign. Armagh won comfortably enough, but Dublin were in the midst of a lot of chopping and changing at that stage. There does look and seem to be a little bit more of a settled 15 from a Dublin perspective. I think you'll see largely what they went with from the get-go in Galway a couple of weeks ago. So look, I think it's set up. I think there's going to be a big crowd. It's a double header. I think for Man of Wexford around beforehand, there might be a big crowd in for that. But you're going to have the hill. It'll feel like proper summer championship football, even though I don't know what the weather forecast is like. And so I think you'll get a really good indication. We know what's absolutely certain. Armagh will bring it. Armagh will bring it. We know that. Because they are so consistent. They have such a level of performance now that they deliver every time they go out. They have so much strength and depth in terms of the panel. The competition within the squad is so acute that it'll ensure that they will not be found wanting. So if Dublin are to win this game, they will need to earn it.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how the script has flipped, that we're saying that Armagh will definitely bring it, and we're wondering about Dublin and we're saying they're inconsistent. It's amazing the way a few years can change the whole outlook of Gaelic football.
Yeah, it's been great though,
which is
hasn't
good.
it? Because it does, yeah, it means that there's more contenders. Which, speaking of, I wonder about Galway now, Nigel, because with Dublin coming back in, putting in that performance, I think everybody felt Galway were going to win that game in Salt Hill. Suddenly they didn't. Now they've got a game against Derry where even with a Derry team who are not going well, it's 10 games on the bounce, they haven't won, they're having a terrible time of it, that much is obvious. But you're still thinking, okay, they drew in the league. I'm not like, this is not a gimme for Galway either, and they absolutely have to win this one.
It's far from a gimme, and the only point that Derry got in the league was in Celtic Park against Galway. So, and the last 12 minutes, like against Armagh, it's all about how Derry frame it. Like they're going to frame it. Look, we finished really strong. We created 5 or 6 goal chances. We've turned the corner. We've stopped the rot. Even though we didn't get the win, we finished really strongly against a mean Armagh side. Galway's confidence will probably be a little bit on the floor, but in all truth, they were slightly unlucky. Like that game could have went either way, but it's how they react to it now, because this is the Galway team that has not got over the line for Sam Maguire, so they don't have that resilience to rely back on. So their confidence is going to be a little down, and you're talking about 2 teams with everything to fight for. This is going to be the game of the weekend as far as I can see, because there's such jeopardy for whoever loses. That's probably their year over.
What kind of pressure do you think sits on Galway now, Rory? Because it's obvious that they have given glimpses of, the brilliant team we've seen flying at last year, but it's been only glimpses really.
Yeah, but I think they did win a fantastic Connacht title. They were put to the pin of their collar by Mayo in that final, and look, there was obviously going to be a natural come down from that. But I think Nigel is right. Like they lost the match by a single point, and they didn't really play that well. It was definitely
I guess that's kind of what I mean.
It was an off color. It was an off color performance. I'll be very interested in their selection in terms of who he picks. Look, we know he's kind of got a solid enough back six. The goalkeeper's locked in, and half forwards, generally pick themselves as well with Matthew Tierney and Killian McDade. But their inside line, it'll be very interesting. Does he start Shane Walsh? Does Shane Walsh, is he fully fit? Can he give the kinds of performances that are within him? And when he does play, I heard Paul Flynn mention this. It might have been on with you. It might have been on another platform. I don't know. But he just he made a point, and I wouldn't disagree in that it seems to be a better balance to their sextet of forwards when Walsh isn't there. That's a mad thing to say, I know, but
he's so X factor though. You couldn't leave him out if he's fit.
Yeah, and that's true. And look, the 2-point option is something that he gives them when that's because if that's the kind of thing that you're chasing. But look, Conroy didn't play well the last day. He was, obviously targeted from a Dublin perspective. They tagged him, and he found it hard to get into the game. I'd imagine you're going to see a major resurgence there, and they are under pressure. To go back to your original question, there's no doubt about that. If they lose to Derry, I think they're out. I mean, Armagh in the last game, and who knows what could be on the line there. So Derry would have them on the head-to-head. So there is pressure. There absolutely is pressure attached to it. But I suppose they're seasoned campaigners at this stage. Is it something that's going to unduly bother them? Like, they know that they have, if they bring if Galway get to 7 out of 10, even 7.5, they will win because they have so much quality, Jacqui. They are and they're a team that's been knocking on the door. I would expect a major response from the defeat, which was, as we mentioned, wafer thin the last day, and I think I backed them to get back on the horse. They have a very good record against Derry. I don't think they've ever been beaten by them in the championship, and they've met quite a bit actually over the last couple of years. So, I think you would assume that this is set up for Galway for a response and to win. But look, Derry at home, who knows?
I think if all things being equal and both teams bring their best, Galway will win. From a Galway point of view, from an outsider point of view, looking at Galway, I find it incredibly infuriating that, and it's no one's fault, and we're talking about extremely gifted players, but there's always injury concerns over Shane Walsh, Damien Comer, Sean Kelly. You're talking three of the best players in the game. There's always, are they fit or are they not fit? And that seemed to be the case for a few years now. If I was a Galway supporter, you'd be always on edge with that. And I'm often wondering, does that noise filter through to the players? Like, there's no real evidence of it so far, but I'd agree with you, Jacqui. I think, and I know the point Paul Flynn was making, that the forwards are better without Shane Walsh, but I think you need a fully firing Shane Walsh to win an All-Ireland. But it's always, is Shane Walsh fit? Like, they need to get him fit. They need to do whatever it is to get to the source of these problems and to get him back to the brilliant form he was in 3 years ago.
But Nigel, could I ask, like, one of the things we often hear about certain teams is injuries. It's not just Galway. We're missing this fella. We're missing that fella. Isn't it just the nature of championship football and hurling, particularly at this time of year? You're never going to have everyone. You will never have a fully healthy deck to pick from. Every team will have injuries, knocks, bruises, bangs, lads that aren't available. Like, is it not just the case you have who you have on a given day and you've got to make that work?
I agree. No, I do agree. And that's why the likes of Armagh, Donegal and Galway are building up their squads to be ready for such robustness. And the nature of the season, it's so compact that if you have a couple of injuries, they could miss a whole season. But I'm just thinking, going into the last year's All-Ireland final, like, it seemed clear that Shane and Damien weren't at full fitness. You could see by them off the ball, their movement mobility wasn't what's needed. They need to be fully firing to add to the Galway team and not be there because they're of what they've historically done or what they're capable of. They need to be adding value to it in real time as such.
Yeah. And look, when we're talking about box office players that kids want to go and pay the entrance fee to see, those two players have it in spades. So football fans want to see them on the pitch. It's not just Galway fans. Everybody does. Speaking of X Factor, Nigel, I do wonder about what is coming in Tyrone in terms of just wave after wave after wave of talented footballers, because you're watching the under-20s again winning and you're thinking, okay, there's another few of them I can see who are just going to fit in quite naturally. And when they come and when they start winning, I'm not sure they're going to stop, because based on it, they're going to go to play against a Mayo team this weekend, who obviously we send our best wishes to Cavan, and like that's a difficult situation for the Mayo camp to be managing. But I'm just looking at Tyrone and thinking, my God, this is a coming team at every level possible.
Yeah, the Tyrone 20s were excellent last night. They have an excellent minor team, and their seniors for the first time, and for their seniors for the first time since the 2021 All-Ireland, probably showed a performance of real substance. And that augurs well for them and not for the rest of the Ulster counties and the counties around the country. It's typical Tyrone. So in some respects, they were wrote off by everyone going to Ballybuffet, because when has Jim McGuinness lost a championship game up there? So they go and do what Tyrone do, and they come out swinging and they produce a brilliant performance. And what's also like Tyrone is maybe to let that level dip the next day out. And they're playing against a team, Mayo, who struggle with that inconsistency as well. And I'd like to echo that about Cavan, and that puts football into perspective and all. And it probably begs the broader question of the pressure. And I know there's no direct correlation, or we don't know, between Kevin's ill health and the pressures he's under. But Mayo people are obsessed with their football, and the pressure Cavan and his management team will be under will be huge. So, like, Mayo are living in a bubble, and where football means everything to them. And I think this team, and this is what it is a killer for them. This team, I believe, and this is only my own opinion, has lost the connection with the fans, because their style of play, we don't know if they're coming or going. And for the first time in over 15 years, I don't think the Mayo crowds are flocking like they used to, because I think they've lost the belief. So Mayo as a team, they have that. They need to reignite their supporters. They have any amount of motivation with Kevin McStay. And then they have the obvious added one that if they lose, they're probably out of the championship. This is a massive, massive weekend for Mayo. But like what Rory was saying about the Derry Galway, if both teams produce it, he sees Galway winning. I think if both teams produce it here, Tyrone win. But Tyrone have been guilty of inconsistencies in the past, so this is a really interesting one.
I just think for Mayo, Rory, the feeling around, you know, Nigel is right. The supporters are going, and in fairness to Mayo fans, my God, they've been through a lot and they do just keep going. But I wonder, do they feel now we're just actually not at that level right now?
I think sometimes you do have to accept that. And just to echo what you've both said, I worked with Kevin for 15 years. Kevin is a gentleman and one of the nicest, most serene, empathetic, decent human beings. And all you can say is you just wish him well. And we hope he has a swift recovery. It has obviously added a little bit of a cloud over the camp. I suppose the best way for them to, to try and give Kevin and give the management, give themselves, give the supporters any type of solace is to go out and perform at the weekend. The issue, though, I think, as you mentioned, Jacqui, to come back to it, I just don't know. Like, do they have a Lee Keegan in their team now? Do they have a Colin Boyle? Do they have an Aidan O'Shea in his prime, Killian O'Connor, Diarmid O'Connor, all those guys? Like, they were such a quality side, right up the middle in terms of athleticism, power. They had a sort of a very clear identity. They had a very clear game plan. They thrived in chaos. Yeah, they probably have the Mayo thing, which is, I suppose, something that's going back as far back as we can all remember, even to the 80s. I remember going to the 89 final and my father saying to me, Cork will win, Mayo don't have forwards. And I was kind of going, well, how do you know? Like, I mean, you've never really seen Mayo. They hadn't come out of Connacht for, I don't know, was it 30 years at that stage or however long. So that's not a new phenomenon in Mayo. And it adds, I suppose, a huge element of pressure to the likes of the Ryan O'Donoghues and that. But look, if there's one thing that we do know is they can definitely pull out a performance when you least expect it. Going to Omagh is as tough as it comes, particularly now with the sort of wave of positivity that's sweeping in behind Tyrone football. Like 3 under-20 All-Irelands in the last 4 years is just absolutely outrageous. And like, whatever about winning these titles, one of the things that impresses me most about the Tyrone is the type of footballer that they're producing, the quality. Like, you could see last night, for instance, Nigel, they were going to go for goals. They were going for goals, and every time they could have had about 7 or 8. Like, I mean, there was a couple blocked, hit the crossbar, a couple off the line. Like, they have sort of a stealthiness in their forwards. There's so much craft, and that level of coaching that they're getting obviously is making a huge contribution. We've already seen McElhone make his debut at senior championship level. There's going to be a whole pile more come, and I think people might be sick of Tyrone in a few years' time very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think Tyrone, the last day, they may have stumbled upon a recipe for success. They ran the ball a lot to Darren McCurry. And Darren is a bit like Patrick McBrearty of Donegal. He likes kind of second phase loop and shoot scenarios. He doesn't want to be the initial ball winner.
Right.
And Dara Canavan is excellent at ball winning, but McCall had him fairly tied up, in fairness to him. So Tyrone may have actually stumbled upon a recipe for success for this year, in terms of, like, McCurry's found his mojo again, and if anything highlights when Tyrone are motoring, it's an informed McCurry, because he's at the top of his game. He's an elite kicker, and he just loves that second phase loop and shoot, where he seems like he's not doing much. He's disinterested. He's kind of walking from the sideline. He's not even cutting, and then all of a sudden, like a flash, he's on it, and it's over the bar, and he's 2-pointers, 1-pointers, excellent free taker. And these Tyrone guys, they're going to have to keep this level of performance and not let the inconsistency come in, because, like you alluded to, Rory, there is any amount of young players in Tyrone coming looking for their jerseys over the next few years.
Yeah, big time. Just a quick word on the other game in that group, because I do wonder if maybe Donegal will actually just casually sit back and watch that game and think, okay, grand, I would love if Mayo did come and bring something to the party, like what Rory is suggesting there, Nigel, that maybe if Mayo were to bring an ultimate performance, suddenly everybody's kind of back in the mix in it, because I think Donegal will feel, look, we've got to bounce back. We got beaten by a better team on the day against Tyrone, but we're better than Cavan. We've proven that over the last few days. We win this and we're right back into this group.
I'd say Jim McGuinness will get into overdrive this week. They will be, in my opinion, Jacqui, they'll very much focus on themselves this week, and they'll they'll just focus on beating Cavan, and like a few of the fixtures we spoke about. Once they produce their A game, they will do that. But Cavan, in fairness, it's hard to measure how much confidence and belief they would have got from their win in Mayo, but Donegal's a different animal. And I thought Donegal were quite poor at times against Tyrone, but coming down the stretch, they were actually still leading by 2 points. So the margins are so small, and the unpredictability of these games, and I do believe, and I love canvassing for it, the new rules has made the game so much more exciting that results are always in doubt till the end. And Donegal, and I think this brings a larger thing, in these round robin games, it seems a team, it's nearly too simplistic to say it, but do you know if your mental energy is a little off? Like Galway came into the Dublin game a little lax. Dublin were really mentally sharp and up for it. So they got the win. I think that's prevalent in a lot of the games.
But do you think that's because they had a break? Like, if you think about this is Donegal's 6th championship game.
6.
Like, compared to like what you're talking about, Dublin being fresh and the same way that Cavan would have been fresh when they came into that game. It's because these teams have had a mental break from the madness.
Yeah, there is an element of that, of course. Like, you're playing week on week, and Ulster's a minefield in itself. So like there is an element of that, but I still think that if Donegal bring their A game, they'll get over Cavan. They'll look to probably use more of the panel members, because like they built up a squad for a reason, for these exact scenarios. Jim McGuinness knew that there was going to be week on week when at the start of the year. So I think he'll go deeper into his panel this week to ensure that there's that mental freshness for bigger tests down the road.
I think he'll have to, Rory, because I actually genuinely thought they looked a little fatigued against Tyrone for that very reason last week.
And it's tough. I mean, they win I suppose, one of their greatest ever Ulster championships, to go through the prelim all the way and win the greatest Ulster final I've ever seen after extra time, all the exertions there. And then they come out of that, and then what do they face in their first 2 round robin games?
Surprise.
Another 2 Ulster teams. That's tough now.
Yeah.
That is tough. And okay, Cavan have been in Division 2, and Donegal will probably see themselves as playing at a higher level. And obviously they have an incredible record against Cavan. I think Cavan have only one victory maybe in the last however many years, which was the famous COVID Ulster final, which was like that last minute goal was major drama. It was a memorable day, actually, that one. I think that might have been the same day that Cork and Kerry played as well. Or it was like a really bad night, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. But look, you'd have to assume, I'd say, most of the prep over the course of the last 7 days from a Donegal perspective would have been up here. You know, there wouldn't be a huge, like, he's not going to flog him. He's not going to have him out and doing laps because they lost to Tyrone at home. That would be completely counterproductive, I'd say. It's mostly mindset now and switching that off. And I like the prize for them to avoid that extra game is a big one, given the fact that you're facing into the week on week again after the grueling campaign that they've had thus far. And you would assume that they'll have too much for Cavan at the weekend.
Yeah, I would expect that that's the case. Let's finish off on the other nice little rivalry that we've been building up over the last 100 odd years or so, Rory, but it feels like the most recent fixture has probably just whet the appetite again. I think all Cork fans going into any Kerry game always have a general sense of Kerry tend to win these games. Let's just go in and see when we can put in a performance. I think given what we saw in the Munster semi-final this year, there is reasons for optimism. And if we can get lashings of rain,
that's what you need.
Another sort of feisty contest. Maybe Cork fans will feel, look, let's just try to get in the mix and see what happens.
Lashings of rain and a Kerry player to be sent off after about 5 minutes.
Paddy or David Clifford,
preferably one
both.
of the Cliffords. Look, they were desperately disappointing last Saturday in Navan. There's no point in saying otherwise. It was a game that they were playing a team who were fragile, and they had set themselves up playing into a hurricane to go in only 3 points down at half time. You're saying, right, now's an opportunity to push on, get a statement victory, give yourself that sort of cushion so that you can go in this weekend and have a real cut without having to worry about the final group game. Try and get a win on the board. And they weren't able to do that, and they just didn't have the quality, there was just the performance right across the board was lacking. It was desperately poor, and it wouldn't give you any sense of confidence going in against Kerry, like given where Kerry are at and the quality that Kerry have too. I would hope the Cork supporters would come out. The hurlers obviously are off until the following weekend. I thought, in fairness to the Leinster Council, it was an absolutely outstanding initiative to give 20,000 free tickets out. I would love if the Cork County Board were in a position to do something likewise, but they can't, obviously, because this is an All-Ireland fixture, which is run by Croke Park. But just allow 20,000 kids in there for free, make a better atmosphere out of it would have been a good idea, because I'm not entirely sure what kind of a crowd you're going to get in Páirc Uí Chaoimh 4:45 on a Saturday. Irregardless, it'll be a bridge too far. I think they could just hope they can go in and mix it as much as they can. They're obviously down a couple of bodies. You'd hope Brian Hurley is fit. It's not helped when Stephen Sherlock is shooting the lights out for the Bars week on week, kicking 12 points this week and kicking 14 points the last week and 6 2-pointers. But look, again, to go back to the point that we made earlier, there's no point in cribbing and crying about the players you don't have. You have, and you just have to make the best of it. Unfortunately, from a Cork perspective, if they put Cathy Barry out there on Saturday, I don't think they're going to win, Jacqui. So,
oh, you want to be careful. That one's going to get quoted back to you now. I think, in fairness, he's probably right, though, Nigel. Look, that's the reality here. These two teams are operating at a different level, and if every single person in Ireland probably feels that is the case, but all Cork can do is go in there and try to put in a performance like what they did in the last game and see what happens.
Yeah, that's it exactly. I don't see Cork winning this game. The loss up in Navan is. It's a difficult one, and Rory, you were at it, and like Cork were winning against the wind at half time. Is that correct?
No, so they were 5-2 up after about 23-24 minutes, and then Jordan Morris got an absolute, like one of the best goals of the championship. So a rocket now, you know, absolutely buried it, and they scored 1-3 without reply there with about in a 5-minute spell just before half time to make it 1-5 at half time to Meath. But Cork playing, and I'm not joking, you know, with a hurricane in the second half, and because it was blowing right down the field, and they just couldn't get 2-point shots off. They couldn't get, you know, enough quality ball into the inside line. But Meath were better. Meath were the better side, and but it was flat. It was disappointing. You would have expected more, particularly after the performance against Kerry, which offered a lot of encouragement.
I always find with Cork that. And Jacqui and Rory, you know better, following them probably more directly, but it seems like their best, when they're at their best, they're like 9 or 10 out of 10, and they're really good. Their bad is so bad that there's no in between, and I don't think that cuts the mustard against the likes of a Kerry, who, even though there's kind of, sometimes I think Kerry have a soft belly, but in terms of dismantling a Cork, they're fairly ruthless over the years. So Cork will need to produce their best display in years to get something here, and unfortunately I don't see that happening, because Kerry and Jack O'Connor is probably realistically in his last year unless he delivers Sam, and that's their ultimate. So they'll have no room for romanticism or
sympathy,
anything of the likes.
Not that we're looking for it from Kerry, by the way.
Yeah. And by the way, come here, he could still deliver Sam. Who knows? Because in fairness to Kerry, they don't have the problems that a lot of those other counties we're talking about with fatigue, with the week to week to whatever. He actually can rotate his squad over these next couple of weeks, because realistically they're going to win all these games. So
well, they'll win. You'd imagine they're going to win on Saturday. Like Páirc Uí Chaoimh will hold no fears for them. Most of them so many of them have played football down there through the years. That'll move them on to the last match at a neutral venue against Meath. You would imagine, again, similarly to that, they'll win that comfortably enough, and then it'll be a case of, you know, look, right, we're packing down now for knockout football, and that's where the real season will begin from a Kerry perspective. And who would back against them? Yeah, you know, like people like Nigel mentioned there, by the way, Jacqui, about Kerry, you know, maybe potentially having a soft underbelly, and that has been an accusation levelled at them. They still take beating. There's no Kerry team that I've ever seen that, you know, that you'll knock out of a championship by beating them by 10, 12 points. It just doesn't happen. Even last year, I mean, look at what it took from Armagh's perspective to scramble over the line. The weakest Kerry team that you'll ever face will still put it up to you.
But isn't it funny that winning dictates the narrative to some extent, because last year and for a few years, like it's the narrative is that Kerry are never really road tested going in, and Armagh had a grueling schedule. But in extra time last year in the other semi-final, it felt like there was only one team going to win it.
Yeah.
And Kerry ran out of juice. They were cramping up, and that's happened to them against Tyrone in 2021. It happened last year. I sometimes feel the easy road doesn't necessarily bode well for them. But like I say, like winning dictates the narrative, so we will see.
Yeah. Well, they can't choose it. All they have to do is travel it and see what happens. Lads, we'll leave it there, but a cracking weekend of football to look forward to. Here's hoping the weather holds up. Who knows what we're going to get. Summer in Ireland. But anyway, loads of football to look forward to. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you afterwards to assess it all.
Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over.